Are you planning on riding the festive 500 challenge over this Christmas? And you want one of those roundels, the ones that Rafa used to give away but don't anymore? No worries, Harrison Fund are doing them if you raise £100 towards research into Duchenne disease. Here we see Nick Telsig with two sons, both suffering from it, who won't reach adulthood. Just ride 500 kilometres, raise £100 and get the badge. Why not sign up now?
Good evening RGT racers, and welcome to the first event in the Nopinz Super Series 2021. This is the first in a 6-part series racing around the ideas of Barnstaple and the South Coast, which is the headquarters of the Nopinz team. And here's the course for today. It's the Barnstaple Loop, heading around Barnstaple, Pottingen, and also through Bickington as well. It's a fairly flat course with a little kicker as we head up Bickington Road there up towards the top of the hill and back to the start line. So we have a 12-kilometre loop here and 3 laps totaling at 36.75 kilometres. So what we'll expect to see, I think, is a lot of heavy racing up the kickers. There's a couple of kickers just as you come out of Pockington, and then a big, large, long drag up the hill towards the start finishing straight. And that's where I'm expecting to see all of the attacks happening up through this map. So the course today, it starts in Sticklepath before dropping down into Barnstaple. We do a little loop following the River Tor through into the football and rugby club, then back round the loop through Barnstaple. We have a couple of small kicks either side of the river. Then there's a pan flat section all the way along the river on the coastal path up towards Fremington Cree. We turn into the Bickington Road through Bickington, up this long drag through into Sticklepath, and this is the only real testing climb. It's a 3-kilometre stretch and rising about 40 metres in total, but I'm fairly sure that lap 1 we'll see some big attacks. Lap 2 it may settle down again, and lap 3 I'm fairly sure that we'll see the boys really pushing it hard. I'm expecting an absolutely brutal end to this finish, dragging up that hill for 3 kilometres. So we have 45 seconds to race time. This is the Nopinz 3R team who are representing the Nopinz series today. You can see it's a very strong, handsome looking team of our boys, led by Mark Swatton, Zach Horner, Chris Gringo Smart, never gets called Chris, he always gets called Gringo, Eric, Klaus, which is one of the Wenger boys, Liam, Matt and Stephen Briley. These are the Nopinz teams, and we shall expect these guys to be putting in a strong performance and probably be pushing some of the pace at the front depending on who's in the pen. So 10 seconds to go. Big field in there today. We've got a lot of races signed up. As you can see, just look at the numbers in there. So we can see we've got these red bars coming up and then they're off. So we can always see this super fast start. Now this is a downhill start, so we're expecting this to really push the pace. It's a -1 degree, so it's downstairs all the way through towards Barnstaple. The first thing we'll see is that you've really got to hang on in RGT. The draft mechanics in this program really does favour staying in the pack. Very easy to get dropped, and it wouldn't be surprising if we dropped a few riders off this very early start of the race. So we've got a very big pack. So in RGT, we can see these red bars at the bottom of the names there. That just gives you an indication about how hard they're working. We've got a break already. Skavskwa is breaking off the front and he's coming to join, but I'd be very surprised if this pack, with the numbers they have, don't close them down very quickly. So the first downhill section now, we're coming down into the area of Barnstaple. And the leaders now just start to flatten out a little bit. This is where the pack should really start to settle. The numbers, well, everyone will settle down, and we'll see once it settles down as we get through the Barnstaple area whether we've dropped any riders off the back. John Beams there taking the front. One of our UK riders, 1.88 centimeters, 73 kilograms. So he's a big, taller guy. Not the lightest of guys, so he might have to work quite hard at this incline towards the end of the lap. But certainly putting the work in there. Gottlieb again. We've got a few little just riders riding off the front already, just testing the pace a little bit. I'd be surprised if any of the attacks stick at this point, but we can just see how these draft mechanics in RGT allow riders just to break free of the pack, just to test their legs a little bit, and just a very early test, and we can see he's holding out a little bit of a gap, but I don't suspect that's going to last very long at all. That might be wasted energy, but this early in the race I'm fairly sure he'll get plenty of time to recover before kicking off again. So we can now see that pack thundering up towards Gottlieb, and yep, that gap is closed down very, very quickly, and he's been passed on. But I'm fairly sure that's it. You can see he's just starting to up his power again, just to get back into the draft, just to get back into the pack, get a bit of recovery, and we can see that just the risers, nobody really taking it easy so far. There's some red numbers being put in. People are still testing themselves just in this very, very first race of the series, just really having a look around each other, just seeing who's going to put an attack in, seeing who's feeling strong, seeing who just wants to sit in and draft, and just wait to see what happens. Nopinz guys are in there as well, still in the front pack, and we can see it looks like the majority of racers have managed to hang on into that front pack for the first part of this race. So the first lap, 12 kilometers in this first lap, and we've got 3 laps altogether. So we will see this start to settle down before we start hitting the main hill, dragging up the edge. So RGT, this is a real life course in Barnstaple. This is where the headquarters of the Nopinz team are. And the roads are actually created from actual GPX files. So RGT has this wonderful facility where you can submit a GPX file after it's been cleaned up, and they will actually turn it into a real life course. So the scenery isn't exactly Barnstaple, but it's very British countryside, which is always lovely to ride around. And we can see Hogard's already starting to make the most of this beautiful scenery he has around him, creating a little bit of a gap. 480 watts on the flat, so he's working hard. The pulse is 157, and at the age that Nicky is, that probably is a relatively low pulse for him. He's being joined up by Zach Harner now, one of the Nopinz guys, who's starting just again to put in a little attack. So we've got little attacks going in already. People are just starting to make it work, and this is that first little kicker that we can see that's over the river. It'll flatten out a little bit again in a minute. So this is just a very small, very short climb. It'll just split the pack a little bit, and we can see that pack starting just to stretch out a little bit. Each of these little kickers, we're probably going to see a few riders just dropping off the back as they start to fatigue, but I'd be very surprised if we didn't have a big pack that gets back together thundering along the river. Thanks very much, Soren, CME, CKD, who are in the Platinum Gold League at the moment. I'm fairly sure they are. Yes, they are. No, they're actually not. They've got 2 teams in, so we have 2 leagues running concurrently at the moment. We have a Platinum Gold League, which is the real high-end riders, and then we also have a Silver Bronze League. We have 10 teams in the Platinum Gold League, so this is going to be really good competitive league here. From the Wahoo Lacal boys, Team 3R, RGT France, Restart Racing, Razio Racing, Pedalers, Nopinz 3R, Moonriders, ECKD, and Dirty Dan's Racing Team, topping off the top of the list at the moment. So this first race will actually start to see who is going to be challenging for the front spots. So over that second little kicker there, that's just over the bridge, coming down the other side. And see Felbot there going into a super tuck position, just saving some watts. And as you can see, when the watts go red, that tells us that the rider is braking. So this is where you can save energy, stop pedaling. Every time you try and pedal when that wattage goes red, you're wasting energy. So this is this long stretch now coming along the Tay River. People will start to settle down now. Gottlieb going off the front once again. So he's putting in a little bit of work, this chap. Starting to really start testing things, trying to stretch it out. Will that be wasted energy on this flat section when the pack's likely to hold together all the way along here? Or is he doing enough just to test his opposition and just to start making them work when they don't really want to? We shall see that in a moment. There's Hart having a quick look over his shoulder, seeing what's on his wheel, seeing if he's got anybody who's coming with him, and we can see Zakana just coming up onto his wheel and just taking him over. If we look on the top left of the screen there, we can actually see the power output of the riders. So all the metrics we can see there give us a good idea about A, how hard the rider's working, but also see what they're doing with regards to the draft. So in the top left we have the power, in the middle we have cadence, and on the right there we have heart rate. So these guys will be variable heart rate depending on the range. Thanks very much, Hard blown me a kiss, it's very kind of you. And just below the power we can actually see those little green arrows. This is the draft indicator. This actually tells us whether a rider is saving energy by being in somebody's draft or whether they're having to work hard. The green arrows give us an idea that they're drafting, and as we can see, because there's so many riders, it's flicking in and out between the draft UI and also the normal climbing UI. If we get a bit more stable, I'll be able to talk you through that in a bit. So we can now see this pack on this flat section just having a little testing each other, and I don't think these are any real serious efforts to make a break. These are just testing the legs for who's around them, seeing who the strong riders are, because these riders are probably riding together in RGT for the first time. Sad Brannin must, I like that. Sad, I like that, for the Nopinz home team. So this is home territory for them, so they may well have some local knowledge depending on where they are. I'm not quite sure whether Liam Bard is riding today. He's very much obviously Liam is not riding today because he has just posted a comment on Facebook. Thank you very much, Liam. So sad that you can't be with us tonight. But, you know, if you're free and you fancy coming joining me on the commentary, by all means come and join me. A double team back again. So as we start to come towards the end of this drag, we can just see there's these little tests every now and then. There's a big pack. Can't quite tell how many numbers are in the pack at the moment and whether we've split off quite a few riders off the back, but everyone's just testing each other. Maybe you've settled down a little bit now. People are quite happy just settling in, just preparing themselves, getting a little bit of recovery, maybe getting a drink, preparing for the climb as they come around this corner past the quayside. So as I was saying, on that left hand side we can just see that draft indicator. So on the draft indicator, it tells you an awful lot of information. So on the very bottom of the draft indicator, there's three little arrows, and that tells you how much wattage you need to actually provide to be able to stay in the draft. The name of the jersey is the rider who you're currently drafting, and on the right hand side the three arrows pointing to the left tell you what power you would need to put out to actually break their draft and start pulling away from them. It's difficult to actually see if you're riding in a race like this. Very often you're responding to what's around, but it's a useful thing to have if you're riding maybe 2 or 3 riders and you just want to know whether you can break their draft and start creating a break. So we have another little attack going off the front there on this flat section, and again probably not a serious attack by Pedersen, but enough just to test the legs. Single riders in RGT probably won't stay away for too long when the pack is this big, but it just gives everyone an idea about whose legs are feeling good, who's feeling strong, who's ready to respond to the attacks, but also gives you an idea about which teams are likely to deploy which riders up the road. And we can see that's all being closed up again by the Nopinz guys. Mard again coming over the top, putting another little attack in. So this first lap, there's certainly plenty of action going on. These are the boys just flexing their muscles, seeing who's actually strong and who's not. Henrik putting out 287 watts, which is probably not an awful lot for him. Pulse is 150, which will be fairly comfortable for a racing pulse. So they're certainly not testing themselves too much, but just doing enough just to keep the legs switched on, just to kind of keep everyone alert and active in the race. So we're starting to come round and we'll just start to see that profile on the top right hand side just start to change a little bit soon. So on the right hand side of the screen we can see those 3 key figures. The speed 42.3 kilometers per hour, which is a reasonable pace. In a pack this size we might expect that to be a bit faster, so these guys aren't really hammering it along here. We can see the slope, so when it's green it's a downhill slope, when it turns to red it's an uphill slope. And beside that is the race time. So currently 10-11 minutes in, and already we're starting to see just little attacks every now and then. below that we can see the course profile, and the flag we can see demonstrated is the rider that we're currently following, which is Feldballer, and he's again breaking up the make off the box. So we're seeing 2 or 3 riders consistently just testing legs. Feldballer is one of them, as we start to see that profile just starting to change in the middle of that box. We can see that hill coming up. The riders will be able to see that as well, so they'll be now battling for where they want to be in the pack to see who's going to create this attack. And as we can see, that's starting to stretch out, so the riders who are towards the back of this pack will be in danger of getting dropped if they don't get in quick. Wouter from Belgium, 35-year-old, 81 kilograms. Again, these chaps aren't always light, but they're extremely powerful. This is where we'll see this really come to play when we start to hit this incline very, very soon. The distance to go is the distance on the bottom right there, as we can see there's 8.93 kilometers, so we're 3 kilometers from the end of this lap, how many kilometers we have remaining, and also the number of meters climbed. So let me tell you a little bit about the series just before we hit this mark. So this is a 6-week series, 6 races, 2 leagues, and we have an individual league and a team league. There are separate leagues for the Platinum Gold and for the Silver Bronze teams. The teams are ranked by the highest ranked rider, and any 3 riders in a team can score points in a race. So it's the top 3 riders who will actually score. So you might well see that some of these teams might be actually sending some of these riders up front just to sacrifice themselves, make everyone work, and just sit in for the actual point scorers to sit in the draft for the first couple of laps and actually start making the attacks in the 3rd laps. So keeping in the theme with Nopinz, the riding around Barnstable for this first section, and the categories will be taken from the first event. So we'll get an idea after this event exactly who is where, who are the strong guys, whether people are positioned in the right place, and the position in your team in the league is determined by your highest ranked rider. So if you have a Platinum Gold rider, you will sit in the Platinum Gold team. But thankfully, rather than messing things around as the season goes on, once you're locked into a league, you will stay there. So if you're fortunate enough to get upgraded, then you get the luxury of being able to continue to ride in your team. So we can see this slope now at 2.7%. That's relatively gentle, so we should see that these power levels stay relatively level. People are starting to work it a bit harder, and we can see, as I predicted, those riders who were just off the tail end of the pack have dropped off the back and have formed another little group. That's what is going to happen. Feldballer again putting in yet another attack, and it'd be interesting to see if he is going to be one of the sacrificial lambs for his team, and whether he's going to be able to put in those same attacks on laps 2 and 3. The finish line is actually in a very slight downhill, so the key here is to getting over the crest of this hill with plenty of power, getting a bit of recovery as we head down the hill before hitting the start finish line again. So 1.5 kilometers to go before the end of this lap. Geeks from Holland putting a little bit of a spurt there, trying to close this attack down from Draft, a very well established team on the other racing platform, which is Wift. And Tom Geeks was previously a 3R member, moved over to Draft to just really test himself a little bit there. So Geeks is putting in a little bit of an effort, and you can see people are just starting to get that crest, put a little bit of work in, see whether they can split the pack up again. And what we'll see now is what we're doing is they'll just have a little bit of recovery, see whether they can just split some riders off the tail end. Up this downhill, this is a 4% downhill, as you can see. Jamerick going into the super tuck position, just trying to save a little bit of energy on this downhill section. And most of the riders, as we can see now, the energy bars are going down into the green, blue, not many in the grey. So if you're familiar with training, you know the coloured bars gives you an indication about how hard you're working. If you're like me, you like to work in the grey zone, which is zone 1. Yep, I agree. PS does look quite good actually. It's not too fast though, Liam, but certainly there's been plenty of attacks along the flat section, as we can see, as we suspected, that hill will be where you will start to see riders dropping up the back. The positioning up that hill before the start is absolutely vital. If you're off the back, if you're just even clinging off the back, once that front group starts to surge up the hill, then you have that cascading effect all the way through the pack, and if you're on the back, you've got no chance of staying on. Cheers, Gringo. Jodie's always nice, smooth Jodie. You kind of beat a bit of posh Jodiness in your life. Look, Ant and Deck, look where they are. You see, all you need, covering all media outlets. I'm quite happy to stand in for Ant and Deck if they're ever struggling. Maybe they've got the mum won't let them out to play. I'm more than happy to step in to the Welsh Castle, have a go. By all means, come and join me next week, Chris. Love a bit of Gringo action on the stream. I don't know if we've got a bleeper though, so I'll just have to double check. And there we go, we're crossing the start finish line for the end of the first lap, 12.27 kilometers, and we can see that that pack is again, that speed's really drafting up, 60 kilometers per hour down this little bit of a downhill section. And if we turn around and we see some of the back, we might actually see some of the riders just dropping off the back of the peloton again. No, it looks like we're pretty much unscathed, although we've got one rider dropping off the back. That's going to be hard for him to get back on now on his own without the draft. And we can just see how much that pack has whittled down. So we're coming up to lap 2. And again, this downhill section, the lads will be trying to get some recovery, but Felballer's not allowing that to happen. So as I was saying, these coloured bars, if you're familiar with training, the coloured bars indicate the level that you're working at. So level 1, which is normally grey, is really what you would call your recovery power. Blue would be your endurance power. So normally you would, if you want to do a long ride, hold it in the blue for a bit, and that will allow you to, it's a fat burning level of energy, and that really tells you that you're not working too hard. Green is your tempo pace, where you can hold that for reasonable time. It's comfortable. When you're starting to get into orange, you're really starting to get into your more into your VO2 area. That makes you work that little bit harder. Pulse starts to go up, breathing starts to work, and you're working towards your FTP. And that means that you're not able to hold that power for a huge amount of time. And there's Hart, who gave me a cheeky little kiss earlier on. Just had her making a couple of attacks, just dropping off the back, and I think that's probably his race done with regards to that respect. He won't be making it back onto the pack, but some good efforts in the first lap by him. Bonner from 3R just again breaking it up, and we'll just see now. It'll be interesting to see in this second lap if there's quite so many attacks along these flat sections, or whether things will settle down and they'll start just to get into a rhythm ready for the next climb. Neil Turner from 3R again just hitting the front. And we're seeing some familiar names just knocking around the front. Jones there again just putting into the orange area, which isn't quite up the top. Neil Turner putting in a grade there. Kevin Barkley from Fife in Scotland, light rider, so riding up the hills, that'll be a nice thing for Kevin up that hill. He'll want to sit in this draft in the flat section, let the big lads carry him round, and then be able to use his weight advantages on the hills to be able to put in some attacks. So things do seem to be settling down a little bit now. We've got a pack that's whittled down from the huge pack that we had starting, and I'm fairly sure that all the way through the group we'll see little pockets of riders riding their own little race, but here we are at the sharp end with the front riders. And even now we can just see things just still continuing to break up a little bit as riders are testing, but I'm fairly sure that will settle down again as the flat section through the river. So can we see all the teams that are being represented here? We can see there's all very similar jerseys. So not all of the teams will have jerseys in RGT yet. It takes a little bit of processing to get the teams in. So race 3R, they have their jersey in. Nopinz are about to. And I can't quite see on the back of that jersey, but there's a little bit of a trio. Pedersen include. It's a cycle club in Denmark, CKD, who both have got teams both in the silver gold and in the bronze silver divisions. So these guys working together as a team, and then all of these guys will likely be communicating on Discord just to tell each other where you are, what the team tactics are, who's going off an attack, and there will probably be a road leader who's actually calling the shots. As we can see there, one of the CKD guys breaking off the front, trying just to test the rest of the group, but the other guys break off. We can see him being closed down, so he's going to fell battle again. He's going to come over the top and attack again. He's certainly putting a shift in as that lad tonight. Red numbers all the way down that left hand side. All the riders are working hard. People know that that little kicker is where the break will happen. Now, can these three, now that they've got a bit of a work there between the three of them, can they just start really making this pack work and really split this race up? The ACKD guys are certainly leading the way, with SWAT from the Americas just carrying on. But as that pack closing down as the downhill comes, are they going to be able to hold out? That gap's just closing down. The pack's working hard, but we can see you've got some casualties off the back. Not everyone's been able to hold that pace, and again, loads of attrition. We're starting to see that front pack just whittle down again. Mike Swart there, the American rider. You could see his numbers going red there as he was breaking around the corner. And we can see all the riders there are on very slightly different bikes. So in RGT, like many of the racing platforms, you can choose your kit. Mike's putting a bit of a spurt. Obviously he's heard his name on the stream, wants to get some more coverage for the sponsors. I'm just putting himself up the front there. And just making it work. So again, at this little incline. This one, not quite so much of an attack this time. Bit quiet at this little incline. I'm going to just drop down the other side. Dropping down over the river as they head down in towards Barnstable. But again, we're starting to see that pack just thin out. Look at the size of the front pack now in comparison to the very start of the race. So we've got significantly smaller pack. Now what that will mean is that that draft will be smaller as well. It'll mean that it's easier for an individual rider to break off, as we saw there, the three riders breaking off, and they might be able to hold it away. So as this pack whittles down even more, these smaller break off groups will be able to hold out a little bit longer than what they were doing if they were riding solo. Another break off the front there, and that's quite a gap he's got there. So is he going to be able to hold that out very long? Blodgett, same team as Mike Swart, he's put out quite a little gap there to the riders behind him, putting out 380 watts at the moment, 82 cadence, so he's ticking along quite nicely. Pulse at 166, so I very much doubt that whether that's up to his max. He's just putting the little testers in. Now with the pack going to respond to that and start trying to bridge it, which we can just start to see happening. EKD looking like they're CKD trying to close things down as a team. Yet again, they're certainly putting in some work, all three of them putting in the work and coming over the top and launching an attack. Zach Harner again has been closing down a lot of the attacks for Nopinz. And we've very definitely got a little breakaway group forming here. The riders are trying, just as you can see, riders are just trying to bridge over to that group, because they can see as those numbers grow in that front group, they will be providing their own draft, and that draft itself will be allowing them to break clear of the main pack, which does seem to be happening. His SWAT done, he's gone down into green zone, he's just getting a bit of recovery, knowing that that gap's going to close. Matt Looker there from the Nopinz 3R team, again just sitting in the draft, just trying to let the other riders do the work to pull them back in again. And we'll see that, so the main team riders, the riders who are expecting to be there at the pointy end, will be trying to save as much energy as they can now and save their energy for that last third climb, which will be coming up in about 15 kilometers, I think. So this is that long flat section along the river. There's Jean Van Aarde, who is one of the Belgian riders, commonly known with his brother as one of the Wenger boys. Nowhere near as handsome, haven't heard him sing, but great rider, very strong sprint, and he's ticking along there 200 watts, which for Jan will be quite a comfortable little ride. As you can see, he's in the, he's just dipped into grey there. Jan's having a lovely quiet time. Beams again off the front as he was in the first lap. John's put in a couple of good attacks. Does he have any riders who can carry it with him? That little group that broke off the front didn't really stay out there for very long. I think they probably could have broken if they wanted to, but they just eased off the gas a little bit, allowed everyone to close up, and I'm fairly sure that we'll see John do that as well, into the orange zone there. Just working just above threshold, putting in a bit of a shift there, just kind of waking his legs up, and what we'll no doubt see is he will see whether he can maintain this gap, which does seem to be slowly pulling out. Although we can see Fellballer again starting to pull out. Cheers, Christoph. The Hendrick pedalers. Absolutely, Liam, totally agree. So as I was saying, these little groups, if we can just get these little groups forming, and if they work together and start rotating the front, we will see a small group going off the front. But at the moment, they're making these little breaks and nobody's really working together to make it stick. So the pack's tending to come together. But I'm fairly sure that after we finish this flat section, when we start to go up the climb, up through Mill Hill, up towards the top, we will undoubtedly see things breaking up by the time we get to Stickle Path at the top of the hill and the start finishing line. So this pack, despite some of the attacks, are just sticking together. Little groups forming, and I'm fairly sure this is what we will see on the third lap, particularly as little groups start to attack, as fighters start to fatigue. A lot of blues and greens in the power zone. People are just backing off a little bit, saving some energy for the climb. Gavash there from TMC, and Klaus having to just check over his shoulder there, seeing who's behind him to see what riders are doing. Now, like similar to a lot of other riding platforms, these riders will have a choice of what camera angle they can choose. We have the very fortunate position of being almost in a drone position where we can chase around and look at all the riders, and as we can see, pan around to see what the pack is doing. The riders themselves will have a choice of multiple cameras. One of them will be first person, so they'll actually see the race through the eyes of themselves, and that's often when we'll see them checking over their shoulder, just seeing who's beside them. They might even switch camera angles during the race to get an idea of what the peloton's doing as they make the break. They might even have a look behind them, or even go to a drone camera where they can actually see a bit of a wider vista. But they may be working so hard that they just want to get their head down, get their legs on, and just push along. So definitely the pace is definitely settled down. We can just see that where the pack are quite happy, just ticking along there at 227 watts, just getting their bearings, getting a little bit of recovery, probably taking in a drink. Some of them might be using some energy cells at this point as well, kind of almost just over halfway through the race, to try and get a little bit more energy to prepare them for the onslaught that's going to come in the third lap. What will be interesting just to see how hard these guys push up the second climb. Will they really push hard and really try and split this front group up? Will they take it relatively easy and save their energy for the third lap? We will see in a very short space of time. That peloton's really settled there now. Nobody's really pushing up the front yet. But I'm fairly sure if anybody's going to attack, it'll be as we start to see that profile change in the next half a kilometre or so. Chase Summit, another British rider. Big contingency from the British today, and from the Danish and also the Americans as well. So there's a good international flavour to the race today, which is one of the beauties about virtual cycling, is you can pull riders together from all over the world on the same platform, competing against each other. Something that you don't very often see, certainly you don't see that at the amateur level in real life, but we can certainly do that from a virtual perspective. And now we can see that incline just started to change. So as we thought, we are starting to see some changes. Matt Lucker from the Nopinz 3R team in the red zone, so he's working hard there, 460 watts. How long can he hold that wattage for? And we can just see that just starting to snake out a little bit now. Riders finding their position, trying to get into the draft, trying to save as much energy they can while holding onto the front group. And again, yep, So it's still, everyone's working together. Nobody's actually starting to make a break there at the moment. They're all working hard. Nobody wants to get dropped up this hill. This is a long 3 kilometer climb. It's not particularly steep, but it just drags on for 3 kilometers. And if you're working in that red zone, in that real anaerobic zone for those 3 minutes, that's a lot of pain that you'd be going through at the top. And we will certainly see a bit of recovery. Another shout out by Christoph for the pedalers. Thanks very much, Christoph. Will we see you racing at all in this series? Yeah, I agree. I'm assuming you're talking about John Beams. John's doing a great job. He's put in some good work. Be interested to see whether John is the sacrificial lamb of the team and for pedalers, or whether he will be there in the 3rd lap to challenge for the end of ride sprint. Incline starting to climb up to 3% there as he just dips up and down, a little downhill section there to give them a bit of recovery. Then it will just start to pick back up again as we start to go up the hill, and we'll start to see if anybody wants to attack up the top of this hill just to try and take it over the top. If we see a group going together here, I'm fairly sure that we'll actually see them be able to split off from the main pack, but it's whether 2 or 3 riders are prepared to push it together, or whether we'll see, as we're seeing now, Sucker going off almost on his own, taking a couple of riders but not really enough to snap the elastic from the chasing peloton. Oh, Wheel Sucker, great name. He didn't do an awful lot of sucking there. He was doing an awful lot of pushing. He was getting sucked himself. Jamrazik now off that top of that first little kicker, just putting a little dig in. 450 watts, 74 RPM. So he's relatively slow using the power. One of the downsides about having such a low RPM when you're putting out power is that you build up a lot of fatigue and a lot of lactic in those muscles. So you really need that recovery, which is what he's doing there now. Going into tuck, freewheeling, trying to save as much energy as he descends down the other side of the hill, getting ready to attack the other side. So we will see a big difference in the RPM from some of these guys. Some of them will spin along at 90, 100 revolutions per minute. Some of them, like Jamrazik there, will just grind up those hills depending on whether they're using the cardiovascular system or the power system. And there's Highball at 98 RPM, so he's very much spinning away there. He's trying to keep those legs ticking over, clear that lactate as much as he possibly can, so he doesn't build up too much fatigue in the quads, because he will need that as he comes up to this next little kicker, and certainly will need that for the 3rd lap. So this breakaway front pack does seem to be sticking together quite well now. We're not really seeing any attrition. These are obviously the strong riders who will probably be fighting for the end of race result. Tom Geeks again. Jamrazik still there. He's still pushing out those watts on the front there. Just keeping that gap there from Clays, trying to close it up, but these 1 and 2 riders won't be enough to actually hold this pack away. We'll probably need 4, 5, 6 riders to get together, start working down the other side, putting in a bit of graft to try and split the pack up. So I'm fairly sure that as we come to the bottom of this hill, we will see the pack coming back together again. As we see riders having a bit of a break. Gottlieb's up there again, John Beams is still there, work off the front, Claes is still there as well. So as we can see, coming back to that start finish line of the downhill, riders are starting to come together. So that has a big impact for this 3rd lap. So if you can manage to crest over the top of that hill with a good lead, you've got a really good chance of being able to have that downhill sprint. So that downhill sprint, you'll develop a lot of speed, and if you've already got a bit of a gap, it makes it much harder for the pack to close. The pack will be able to close much better on an uphill, but if you've got a good gap on that downhill, there's a good chance that you can stay away. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody's brave enough to really put in a big smash attack halfway up that hill. So coming to the bottom of the hill, we're now on to this 3rd and final lap. The front group is significantly smaller than it was at the beginning of the race, and that's just that attrition. Little attacks in the start, just trying to break the riders up. These riders probably know that any attacks now will be snuffed out, and it probably will be wasted energy. So we'll undoubtedly see these flat sections just settle down a little bit, The teams such as ECKD, who've got a few more numbers, they may just start pushing things out a little bit. Looks like they've got 4 riders in that front pack already. Nopinz 3R, they've got 3 riders in there still as well. Peddlers, they not sure, but Swart and Co, they've got 3 riders in there as well. So there's still a few riders in each team. Draft have got a couple of riders in there as well. So if you've still got a few of your team in that front group, you can afford to push somebody out and just really take a gamble. See whether you can create a gap, see whether you can start making the pack work, and then let your main riders or your sprinters follow in the draft and try and save some energy. So most of the teams have got certainly 1 or 2 riders in the pack there. And as we go through the series, we'll become more familiar with what groups and what teams have got what riders, who are going to be the front runners, who are the attackers, who are the sprinters, who are the climbers, and which are the sacrificial lambs or the main men on the road. Beebs again, pushing it out again. So John Beams from Peddlers doing a great job of attacking over and over and over again. Will he be able to sustain that level of work to the end? We shall see. But we can see, contrary to what I was thinking, we can actually start to see that front group starting just to break up a little bit. So these little attacks going across this flat section are really, people are really just trying to whittle that front group down to as small as they possibly can, to see whether we can get a small sprint group. This is normally riders who know they don't have a strong sprint, trying to make the sprinters really work hard now, try and get rid of as much energy as they can in these sections, so that when it comes to the climb, you can finish the riders off and quash out their super strong sprint. And normally the riders would have done their homework, looked at which of the sprinters in each team and know who they want to attack at what points in the course. ECKD, Gottlieb and Co, again continuing to push the pace on the front, and we're starting to see just a few little gaps form in the peloton behind those guys. Things just breaking up a little bit. We've got 2 very clear little groups now. Will that come back together on the flat again? We've got this little kicker downhill section there. We have got a couple of riders just who've splintered off the back. Unless they start working together, getting their act together, start working hard, they can wave goodbye to a chance at the sprint. Depends on whether Jamzarek wants to push the pace. It's all very quiet again. So again, we've got this little kicker again. And there's Luca dropping off the back there. This is going to be tough for Matt to get back in. He's going to have to work really hard, and you can see he's up into the yellow. He's going to have to go up into the red to be able to close his pack, and I think Max realised that he's not going to be able to close down that pack, and he'll spin it in. But he's still got a good chance of keeping ahead of the group behind him. In 17th place is Jan Vanner as well, just ahead of Matt, again just dropping off that front pace as ECKD and crew are pushing the pace. So a couple of the Nopinz guys are dropping off, leaving that group to just continue to whittle down attack by attack. This is that first little kicker that we are hitting just before we hit the flat section, and again this is a great place to put in one of those little digs, try and break the teams up a little bit. There'll be a little bit of recovery as they come down the other side, as they gather up together again, and then we'll just start to see as that course profile starts to change, somebody else will just come over the top and just make a dig, seeing if they can break a couple more riders off the back. As I said before, so Jan, I was saying, is a strong sprinter, and we can see exactly what the pack did. They really started to push the pace, really push them hard, really try and quash out that sprint. So Nopinz lose 2 riders up that little section, leaving Zach there in the front. So there's no team tactic. Zach's going to have to just go with the flow now. He's going to have to look at what the ECKD team are going to do, and as we suspected and we predicted, Bearing putting in a big attack up this little kicker, trying to break that front group up again. Who is you going to take with them? The other CKD guys with the 8.0% incline. So that's a canny little kick, enough to make the legs burn and enough to split any group if they can just get this elastic to snap. We see it just start to snake out there. Will we see any gaps forming? Wheel Sucker sucking nothing but fresh air in the front there as he hits the front yet again. and then just drops into the draft back at the start. So there's Claes, who's on his own as well. So Claes, another solo rider in this front group, doing very well. He's put in a couple of good attacks in that first lap, had a bit of a quieter second lap, but we can see now he's just starting to up things. So is he wanting just to ease it out? Is he wanting to get rid of these sprinters, or is he actually fancy his chances? Gottlieb freewheeling. Hopefully that wasn't a power drop there by Gottlieb, or was he just having a bit of a break, maybe taking in an energy gel, getting ready for the onslaught that will be coming up in the next few kilometres. Beams still there from Pedalers. The Jamrzik on the front again, continuing to push things along a little bit. He's putting some good attacks in this lad. He's doing some good work on the front. Be interesting to see whether he's actually pulling away just to see whether he can get Samet in his draft, his teammate, or whether he is going to actually have a go at it himself. So, starting to settle down. Everyone's starting just to jostle. Look for the positioning in this pack. They'll be starting just to thinking about tightening their bootlaces, getting some energy in, trying to get some recovery if they can, desperately trying to get some recovery ready for this final onslaught up the hill. But some of these riders are not making it easy. So Highball there hitting the front a few times from ECKD. These ECKD guys are certainly making things work. But Zach Horner there, solo from Nopinz 3R, starting to make some moves, starting to show his intent. Pushing 372 watts, which for Zach will be relatively comfortable. Pulse of 159, so he's certainly working hard enough to get a recent workout, but certainly not pushing himself to the max. 96 RPM again, he's spinning along there, trying to keep that cadence high, trying to make sure he works out that lactate from the muscles and see whether he can sustain this power and see whether he can just split this group up. ECKD working as a trio to try and close him down, and it looks like they're slowly edging into his lead. But again, we're just seeing things just snaking out a little bit. Some of these riders will start to fatigue very soon, and we're likely to see a few of the riders, I'm fairly sure we'll see at least one or two riders completely blow the lid as they go up that climb up in towards Barnstaple and Sticklepath. Yep, Zach's eased off. Pack started to come back, but he's decided to have another kick. Good little tactic there from Zach. Get the pack to work hard, just let them back in again, and then pushing on again, seeing whether they can respond. Nothing to lose there, no team with him to take it. There's Klaus again, putting in an attack, taking riders with him. So everyone's now starting to think about jostling for positioning. They've still got a little while before the climb, but they just started to jostle, just seeing whether they can splinter off one or two riders, see whether they can just really empty out the sprinters' legs, making the light guys work really hard along these flat sections. So if you look on the left hand side, we can actually see the watts per kilogram that these riders are putting out. So that is a calculation based on how many watts they're putting out, which is the power in the top left corner, divided by the weight. Obviously, the heavier you are, you can actually put out the same amount of watts for less watts per kilogram because you've got more meat behind you. These lighter riders find it much harder on these flat sections. They have to work harder. Their watts per kilogram will be high. We might see quite a difference. You know, we can see 2.5 some riders, up to 4.0 in other riders, and that's all to do with the weight that the rider is. So the lighter riders have to work really hard along these flat sections, and that might be one of the tactics that the bigger guys are putting in. Make the light guys work hard along this section because they know that these light fellas will make them work hard and certainly put the pain on as we go up the climb. John Beams again from Pedalers, putting off a little attack at the front. Got a teammate there with him. Is he going to be able to hold on to this, or is he just testing things a little bit? And again, we're seeing the same names, we're seeing the same riders over and over again hitting that front, putting the work in. So these riders are putting off. We've seen a few riders who haven't hit the front at all, and it'd be interesting to see whether these riders are just going to come over the top after the incline and take all the glory. we can see the change in the posture of these riders. So if you're riding, if you're in the pack, you can just see on the left hand side, you can see what your other riders are putting out with power. Once those numbers start to turn red, you know that your opposition is starting to put in a little bit of a dig in. We can also see the riders stand up on the pedals just to try and create a little bit of additional work to break that draft. Yeah, so we can see definitely settling down there now. So we can see by the course profile there, things are going to change very, very soon. Who do we think is going to be making the attack up this hill? What's your predictions? Gottlieb's done a lot of work so far. Highball's done a lot of work. Beams has worked really hard as well. Jamrazik, he's another one who's been putting in. And there's Feldballer, he did an awful lot of work in that first lap, but hasn't done anything since. Zakana, yet again, putting another attack. 11.1, I think. 12.3 watts per kilogram he's putting in. So we can see, look, nearly everybody is in orange numbers there, apart from Jamrazik, who's obviously one of the heavier riders. And we can just see how that is working out. Yeah, Christoph, Henrik and John are putting in a great shift there today. John's done a huge amount of work and Henrik's been doing a little bit too. So be interesting to see which of these two guys is going to be there at the end for the sprint. Yeah, Zach is one of the strong guys. He's one of the stronger guys in the peloton, you're right. Put in a couple of attacks. Will he be able to hold off? You've got Blodgett there. Blodgett did a little bit of attack at the very, very start of the race. And he's been quite quiet for the rest of the race, but that's maybe the reason why he's left it to the third lap to start putting his attacks in. Now here we go. This is going to be the make or break. So whoever crests the top of here at the front is likely to be able to hold the power over the side. Wheelsucker yet again sucking nothing but fresh air as he hits the front. There's Klaus coming over. Blodgett coming through as well. Feldballer coming, he's had a quiet second lap. Maybe he's just kind of kept something in reserve for this third lap. And I'm fairly sure we'll see this jostling backwards and forwards as this climb goes up. Will anybody have the ability to break the rest of the pack? Jamrazik 9.1 watts per kilogram, putting in a good attack. Again, there's a little bit of a down section here. He's got that's a canny little gap he's got there. Can he hold it? What do you think? Can he actually hold? That's a good gap he's got there. 47 meters gap, as we can see on the leaderboard on the left hand side. That gap is increasing. 60 meters is out there now. Is that too much for the peloton to close? They're being very cagey. Look at those coloured bars. Greens, blues, yellows. Not an awful lot of reds going on there, so they're not trying to chase them down. Liam Bard there, Nopinz rider. He fancies a break to get this. And it looks like that might be the case so far, but he's only got 2 kilometers to go. Can he hold on to that lead? Or are the pack going to close him down? We can just see those coloured bars just starting to change colour now. They were taking it easy. The blues and greens sitting there, letting him thrash himself out in the front. But we can now start to see these oranges, reds, yellows start to appear under these riders that are starting to work harder and harder and harder. Wheelsucker there, making a break. Jamrazik still has a significant lead over the rest of this pack. So he's got nearly 40 meters on the second rider there. So there's Wheelsucker trying to close up. And there he goes, going past one of the lap riders, trying to shut down Jamrazik, who's still got a 50 meter lead, and they're still putting out 6.4 watts per kilogram as we head to the top of this first little bit of the crest. But there's another section of this ride to come, so have these guys put an attack in too early, or will they have time to get over the top of the hill, over the other side, and get the win? Jamrazik certainly is putting in a good bit of a shift there, taking it easy now. 3.3 watts per kilogram. He's just getting a bit of recovery down this downhill section. He's got a comfortable and very handsome lead there now. Wheelsucker again, he's got a 60 meter advantage over the rest of the pack, but he's got a 66 meter deficit to Jamrazik, who's really, that one attack really completely broke the pack apart, and he wasn't putting out massive watts, but it was enough to create the gap, and the pack just didn't respond. So we've now got 2 clear runners. We've got Jamrzik, who's out at the front riding solo. He's got less than a kilometre to go. It'd be very surprising if he doesn't manage to hold on. Wheel Sucker in second place, who's 40 metres behind him, and then you have the pack who are just trying to close down, but they've got 80 metres to catch up. They've got 80 metres to try and catch Sucker. So I think this little chasing pack are fighting for third place. Wheel Sucker slowly trying to break down into Jamrzik's lead. He's closed it down to 28 metres, 26 metres. He's working hard. So who's going to get over the crest of this hill first? Is it going to be Jamrzik who manages to hold on, or will Wheel Sucker be able to close him down, get in his draft, come round his wheel and take the win? I'm not sure, because Jamrzik's now on the descent into the start finishing line. Is he going to be able to hold on and hold off Wheel Sucker for the win? It's going to be close, actually. 30 metres, that gap's holding out. 5.1 watts per kilogram. Certainly not going into full sprint yet, but I'm fairly sure that he will start upping his power any second now. You can see the finish line coming into play. He's holding on 5.7 watts per kilogram, and Jamrzik crosses the line in first place. Great break up that hill. Wheel Sucker takes in second, and we've got a bunch sprint. Klaus manages to take it just from Feldballer, who got 4th place, and Zach Horner in 5th. So we can now see the rest of that front group starting just to come towards the line. After that fantastic break by Jamrzik, completely broke that pack apart. Wheel Sucker was the only one who was able to hold on. Lucker and Vanna, 16th and 17th place, working together. They've got a big enough gap off the guys behind them to be able to hold that. They've got a big gap in front of them with Gottlieb, and they're certainly not going to be catching those guys, but they're working at home, coming over the crest of the hill, and they can just, as you can see, the power outings are just easing off a little bit. They've got no need to push it too hard now. Nothing to gain by working hard. Look at down into the grey zone. He's just cruising in, just taking in the scenery, waving to the fans, texting his mum, get the tea on, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So on the right hand side there we can see the final results. Daniel Jamrzik with a fantastic break up that last hill to take the win. Didn't even need to do the sprint. 5.7 watts per kilogram he finished off at. Wheel Sucker into second place with a good break from the pack, and Wouter Klaas just winning that end bunch sprint. Feldballer, who did a great set of work in the first section of the race, and Zach Horner, who put in a lot of effort into the third lap, making the gaps break, make up our front 5. And we can see down the road Tom Gakes, who put in a couple of attacks in the second lap, and John Beams, who worked exceptionally hard throughout the whole race. So John did very well to work as hard as he did and managed to hit a top 10 finish. And now we can see the draft mechanics in RGT really does start to play. So we can see all these riders coming in dribs and drabs and 1s and 2s now. As you start to get break from the pack, it's actually easier to break away from riders, and it's actually also harder to hold the wheel. Heading down the road, as we can see, Gottlieb in 15th. I'm fairly sure that Gottlieb was one of the attackers there from ECKD, and I'm fairly sure his job is to try and break things up. Mike Swart from the States again worked hard today. Samet trying to hold on with Beams, trying to partner him along, and Matt Lucker, and there we go. Everybody's slowly starting to come in now. Starting to see the whole of the team starting to come home. So as the other riders come home, that is the first race pretty much done and dusted. So how did you feel? What did you feel about the race today, guys? Was the prediction right? Did you feel that that's what we were expecting to happen? Certainly I thought that we would see the group split up that incline, which we did. And I'm actually quite surprised that there was such a lot of attacking along the flats. But when you're at the platinum gold level, we will see guys continuing to attack, which is exactly what they did. And it really whittled that front group down quite significantly from the 100 and odd riders we had in the front at the start pen down to a handful of riders at the end challenging for the win. So we will calculate the points based on the results today. And we have the league updated. And the best place to look for that is the rgtdb.com site, where we'll be able to see all of the league results put in for the team and also for the individuals. And then we'll see over the next 2 or 3 races who are starting to emerge as front runners for this race. Next week, same time, we have the Bood Loop, which is another course, slightly longer next week, so it's 40.48 kilometers, and again around the same area, around the Atlantic Highway area. And this is a bit more spiky, this course next week, a bit more up and down, up a big incline, ups and downs, a big rolling course, and I'm fairly sure that we'll see several little mini attacks and slightly more elevation next week as well. We have 648 meters of elevation for the ride next week. I hope you enjoyed the race there today. There we go, there's the Bood Loop wrap coming on. As we can see, it's a big circular loop in the clockwise direction this time, and what we've got mainly with this is just lots of little hills. There's not really going to be any chance to get any recovery like there was today, so I'm fairly sure that we will see even more attrition next week as riders start to attack on a regular basis up these little inclines. And I'm fairly sure we'll see very similar riders doing the same amount of work as we have today. Well, I hope you enjoyed the ride there today. Any comments, please put them in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about RGT as well with regards to that. And here we go, there's the final results coming in for the race today. A good number of riders in that race today, and that really does make a big difference. It does allow tactics to come into play when you've got so many different riders coming in from so many different teams, and that's really good to see. We could see the ECKD guys really start to put team attacks in and starting to create some space. We saw John Beams working alongside his riders as well, putting some attacks in Ride 3R, with Neil representing those, and Zach Harner representing the Nopinz guys starting to put in some attacks as well. So lots of attacks going into this ride today, lots of work, and we will see lots of points. Average wattage we can see there, 4.53 watts per kilogram for the finishing rider. That's an astounding bit of work rate, and all the way down, even down to the 40th place position, we can see 3.72. So these guys certainly weren't taking it easy, certainly very high quality riders, certainly top 10, nearly all above 4.0 watts per kilogram, putting in a good shift. We'll probably see some of the lighter riders with slightly higher averages, some of the heavier riders with slightly lower averages, as we mentioned earlier on in the race. So put your comments in. Any interactions, great. Love to hear your comments, love to hear you supporting your team. Hopefully we'll get the same number of riders in the race next week, and hopefully we'll actually start to see what happens. So prizes for this race. So the Nopinz Sub-Zero Champions gets the Sub-Zero Champions jersey for the winner. The Sub-Zero is a great piece of indoor training kit designed to be worn for indoor training. The little pockets for ice as well to try and keep you cool alongside a fan. That is an absolute essential bit of kit for indoor riding. And so the winner gets a Sub-Zero jersey. We have some vouchers as well, and if we see a move that you like, give us a shout. Why not tell us who you thought was the best attack of the day, who you thought was the rider who put in the most effort on today's ride, and who deserves a little bit of a special mention for their performance today. Thanks very much, Christoph. Yeah, Damazik had a great race there today. Timed it very well. His attack was perfect. Managed to break off from the pack. The pack didn't really respond as quickly as it should have, allow him to get over the top of the last little incline with what was actually a diminishing lead from Wheelsucker, but he managed to hold on and took the win relatively comfortably. I very much doubt it'll be that comfortable next time, but we will see you all next week at 7 PM GMT. And don't forget, there are a couple of other time slots as well, but I'll be commentating for the next 6 weeks, hopefully joined by some very special guests. So please do tune in again. Please do send your comments in. Please do give us any feedback, and we will love to see you all again next time.